Now it's time for Tim's Movie Magic, which is a specially extended edition this week, focusing on the UK's first ever film music festival.
The movie music you love, with Tim Burton on Movie Magic.
Just across the Irish Sea in Birmingham during mid-July was the first ever film music festival for the UK, appropriately titled The Soundtrack to Your Summer, hosted by the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, an event that was hugely successful and further cements the significance and brilliance of music composed for film. Their headline guest for the week was none other than Sir Anthony Hopkins, but we'll chat more about that later on. So we were there for all concerts and events and had exclusive access to some of the organisers, performers and wonderful musicians that brought the festival to life. So let's start at the beginning.
Here we go!
The soundtrack to your summer.
The festival kicked off with a unique discovery at the nearby library in Birmingham city centre of sheet music from early 20th century silent movies, including, believe it or not, music written for none other than Charlie Chaplin, performed authentically at the piano by the charismatic Ben Dawson.
Well, I got a phone call from someone upstairs in the office saying, oh, the Birmingham Central Library have just uncovered all this stuff in their move and it looks like it has some stuff that was written for Charlie Chaplin, and we'd like you to do if you can, go and sift through it and see if you can find anything worth doing in a pre-concert event. So I had about an hour to go before my train back to London, so they took me down into the bowels of Central Library, and piles of aging yellow crumbly music and said, right, there it is. And that was it really. It was, I mean, it had been vaguely categorised by composer or by publishing house, but it was just a pile of stuff that I just had to sift through in about an hour.
What followed later that night was the first of the week's dynamic concerts. 21st Century Soundtracks was the title. This included music from the BAFTA-winning King's Speech, Oscar winners Atonement and Slumdog Millionaire, and the recent Bull by David Arnold. World-class conductor Dirk Brosse chatted with me about some of today's best film music and his joy conducting it in the launch concert.
I think you recognize film music as you recognize chamber music, as you recognize classical music. Film music has something, in French we say narrative, narrative. So there is always a narration, you see. It's playing on the mood of the listener. Because this is the function of film music. It's the function to give one extra emotion when you're watching a screen. Don't forget that when you watch a screen, that almost 80% of your attention is going through the eye. So there is very few space actually for the ear or for other senses. So knowing this, it's very important to know that the function of the music. So sometimes it is to underline, to color the emotions, but sometimes it has a role of taking over the storyteller, you know, the famous overscoring passages where what we all love very, very much, and there is a tradition, of course, and I think in the 21st century, nothing really has changed a lot. Everybody is writing in the old traditions, except for some people that are really bringing new sound. For example, the guy Johnny Greenwood, he did something really fantastic.
Clever.
It's like a more contemporary music sound, you know. So it is possible to open up the style and to go in different directions.
There have been many excellent jazz-infused film scores over the years, and the second concert in our festival week included just that. The National Youth Jazz Orchestra, or NYJO as they like to be called, features the next generation's players, and led by Mark Armstrong with jazz legend Guy Barker, they perform such classics as Dirty Harry, Bullet, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Austin Powers. As it happens, Guy Barker played trumpet on countless film scores and was actually director Anthony Mangela's player of choice.
Anthony was so encouraging, and the way he directed the musicians on the sessions was interesting. You know, he would try. There was a version at the closing titles where we did a version of "You Don't Know What Love Is," which is actually how I got the gig, because he heard an album I did with strings, which was called What Love Is, and Sting sang You Don't Know What Love Is, and the opening track was a piece called The Peacocks by Jimmy Rolls, and it was that tune that actually got me the gig. But when I went to meet him, he said, I'd love to have a song, a theme going all the way through the film. I'd like it to be The Peacocks. And then he discovered that the song was written 4 years after the film was supposed to be set. So being the perfectionist he was, he said, we can't do that. And then, so that's why You Don't Know What Love Is, because that was track 2. And became, you hear that throughout the film, and we did a version with John Martin at the end. But when I was doing the solo, I was just playing a solo with a mute in on the closing titles. And Anthony just came down and he sat down with me and he just looked at me and he explained exactly what was going through Matt Damon's head at that moment, where he was sitting, why he was alone, you know, how fractured he was completely. And then he just talked to me over until he eventually said, that's how you're supposed to sound. The way he did it was quite amazing, because it just made me play completely differently. And as I went to hear the playback, Peter King, the alto saxophone player, he was on the session too. He was upstairs in the booth listening to the whole thing, and I saw him sitting outside, just bewildered, just said, I've never heard anybody direct a musician and get the emotion out the way he had. He said, if every record producer would like that, it would be quite amazing.
The soundtrack to your summer.
If you're going to have a film music festival, then you can't not feature its finest practitioner, John Williams. The penultimate concert saw Birmingham's beautiful symphony hall resonate with the glorious music of Williams. We were treated to Superman, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Jaws, and of course, Harry Potter. The conductor of this night was Michael Seal, a very thorough musician that studies the original film soundtrack religiously.
Well, I mean, I'm a big believer in the fact that people come to hear a concert such as that, and the whole concert of the music of John Williams. They've come to hear the music they remember in the film, and either to hear the music as they remember it, or to hear the music and be transported back to the film. I don't think, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, that the audience hasn't come to hear Michael Seal's interpretation of Star Wars or of E.T. or of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They've come to hear the music as they remember it. So often I will go back to source, often watching the whole movie, but sometimes just clips or the original soundtrack CDs, But even between the movie and the soundtrack CD, there are tempo differences.
Yeah.
I prefer to go back to the movie. So, for instance, the end of E.T., the last 10 minutes, which is called Adventures on Earth, is actually a lot quicker on the film than it is on any subsequent performances I've ever heard on CD or on disc. And even a little thing like, I happened to wander into my lounge the other day and my kids were watching The Prisoner of Azkaban, and the snowball fight was just around the corner, and we do the snowball fight at the end of the first movement of the Azkaban suite. It's much faster than the soundtrack recording, and it makes a difference. You get it off straight from the movie, and it should transport people to where they should be, where they remember the movie.
What made this week even more special was a sprinkling of classic film screenings. We had Dirty Harry and Bullet to coincide with the Jazz in Film concert. The start of the week there was The King's Speech, but the highlight was undoubtedly Steven Spielberg's classic Raiders of the Lost Ark, back on the big screen just before the John Williams concert. What could be more appropriate? For many, the best was saved for last. The grand finale of the festival saw the one and only Sir Anthony Hopkins and his very own music share the stage with scores from some of his best-known movies, including Shadowlands, The Silence of the Lambs, and Kenneth Branagh's recent Thor.
You're unworthy! Father. I now take from you your power! And I cast you out!
Hopkins came on stage at the start and at the end of the concert and candidly spoke about his early musical influences and inspirations. It has to be said that being in the presence of such a film legend does leave you a little starstruck. But when that initial feeling wears off and you witness Sir Tony groove to his own music in a playful manner at the side of the stage, the end result is encapsulating and utterly unique.
I'm here actually because I never grew up. So I'll give you a little something, a sketch. I wasn't very bright at school. I was really backward. I was called backward, slow. So I devised my own world and I heard music very early in my life. And I didn't think there's any significance in it, and I don't like to make symbols of significance about anything, especially about acting and all that. But so music to me was a strange phenomenon as a little boy. And I used to hear sounds and music in my head. My father thought I was a bit touched. But,
here we go! The soundtrack to your summer.
The festival was a resounding success, and there's more being planned in the future. Here's festival advisor and presenter Tommy Pearson.
Well, I am a great advocate for modern film music because I want to choose the best that we can and show that all is not lost, because there's a lot of feeling around that it's not as good as it used to be. But I really do think that with composers like John Powell and Harry Gregson Williams and Danny Elfman, Alan Silvestri, Howard Shaw,
yep.
All these guys, David Arnold, Rachel Portman, Anne Dudley, Patrick Doyle. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, very fine musicians, producing some really good work.
Yep.
So that's what I really want to do. I want to show people that exists. On the other hand, I do plan, hopefully, if we do this next year, I think we should do a Golden Age concert as well. What I'll be really looking for is stuff that not everybody has done before, and see if I can find some new stuff to do. See what we can find, and maybe do a movie all the way through with the music live underneath it.
Right. Yes.
Because that's another thing I've wanted to do for ages.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing some of that.
The soundtrack to your summer.
That was a special extended movie magic. We'll hopefully catch more film music festival action next year. I'm Tim Burton. I'll see you at the movies.
Movie Magic with Tim Burton, the movie maestro.
Weekend Extra is brought to you by Belfast City Centre retailers. Make this weekend one to remember. Stay the night in Belfast and let your hair down from £60 hotel breaks. Click gotobelfast.com for what's on in town.